Welcome to the SEI Podcast series, a production of the Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute. The SEI is a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. A transcript of today's podcast is posted on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts.
Hi, and welcome to the SEI's podcast series. My name is Andrew Hoover, and I lead the Resilience Engineering team in the Software Engineering Institute's CERT division at Carnegie Mellon University. I'd like to welcome Katie Stewart. Katie's a senior engineer also in the SEI CERT division. And today we are here to talk more about some of the process maturity requirements included in the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. Our discussion today is going to focus on reviewing and measuring your cybersecurity activities for effectiveness. So first, Katie, why don't we start out by telling our guests a little bit about ourselves and what brought us here to the SEI. So I've been here at the SEI for 8 years now, primarily working in the Cyber Risk and Resilience Directorate. My background is in cyber auditing and technical vulnerability assessments. So I have been able to continue that work here at the SEI, and that's specifically what brought me onto the CMMC project.
Yeah, hi. As Andy said, I'm Katie Stewart. I've also been with the SEI about 7-8 years now, primarily looking at risk and resilience, as well as measurement and analysis. So I'm excited to talk today about measuring.
Thanks, Katie. So for members of the audience who are new to the topic of CMMC, we've done several blog posts and webcasts and other material that provide a good overview of CMMC and our work on it. So we'll be sure to provide links to all of those materials in the transcript. Okay, so the process maturity requirements at level 4 of the CMMC is to review and measure activities for effectiveness. Katie, can you tell us a little bit about this requirement and what it means?
Yeah, sure. So all organizations that are seeking to get a CMMC level 4 or a level 5 certification will be required to show that they are controlling their CMMC practices by reviewing and measuring their activities. So this will account for all of the activities that go into carrying out the CMMC within their organization.
So, good point. Thank you for that introduction. So reviewing and measuring activities is really necessary to make sure that you're getting out of them what you would expect, right? It seems pretty involved. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there's two components to it. There's the reviewing and the measuring. So if you look first at reviewing, the process of reviewing activities for effectiveness simply means that you're looking at your practices to see if they're producing expected results. So within the context of CMMC, at a level 4 or even a level 5, you're looking at each of your CMMC practices to say, hey, these are performing and they're giving me the results that I expect. If we, choose an example like access control, you may have somebody that's designated to review accounts on specific machines to ensure that your access control practices, things like limiting access to authorized users, that they're being implemented, followed, and effective. And again, when we say effective, we're simply just saying that what we're doing is giving us the output that we expect.
And so another important aspect of this process is communicating the status regularly with higher level management, right?
Yeah, exactly. And let me add to that the reason why you do that, the reason why you review and then communicate status is so that if there is a problem that's discovered, you've brought the right people into the conversation and they can help take action and correct any issues that you identify. So for example, with access control activities, and if I'm reviewing them and I realize that I am not limiting unauthorized users, I want to raise that issue to the appropriate stakeholders as soon as possible.
And so that communication can really take different forms, right? It could be just a regular status meeting. It could be
Absolutely.
emails back and forth. It's kind of whatever works, isn't it?
Yeah, and organizations should have a set of periodic reviews, right? They should be reviewing status periodically, at a time frame that they define, but there also should be a clear line for communication when issues do arise, right? So outside the bounds of your periodic reviews.
Got it. Okay, good. So that's reviewing and communicating, which is the first part. So let's talk a little bit about the second part of this process, which is measuring for effectiveness. Now, measuring is one of those things that a lot of organizations get scared by, and they find it, just very difficult. So any tips that you can provide, Katie, on kind of how to do this effectively?
Yeah, so the measuring component at level 4 is on top of reviewing. And you're correct when you say measurement can be somewhat difficult, and it can also be expensive, right? So this is why we do see this at a level 4 within CMMC, because organizations that are committed to measuring their CMMC activities, they will require, a resource investment. So some kind of examples that you would be measuring would be, measurement of your actual performance against your plan, right? So we're planning out our activities, and then you want to measure to see that you are achieving your plan. You may measure things like the time it takes to accomplish activities, right? You may look at how long it takes. Is that within your bounds, within the expected value? And then you may measure things as simple as successes and failures, right? How often are you successful in a certain activity, and how often do you fail? And then while reviewing is just simply looking at the results to say, are these within my expected values? When we start to measure, we're actually looking at quantifying the performance of our activities, which is what drives improvement. You cannot improve what you can't measure, right? So we're no longer just looking to say, is what we're doing effective? We're actually looking at how effective is it, and can we continue to improve to become more effective?
Right. And so in doing that, the CMMC model doesn't define any specific measures, right? It's up to the organization to kind of measure what's important to them.
Right. That's exactly right. And measures within an organization should be driven by an organization's measurement objectives. So one organization may measure one thing because it's important to them, and then another organization may choose to measure something else. So it will be organization defined, and again, up to the organization.
And so, Katie, another question that we get about this one pretty often is about timeframes. Like, is there any required time frame that these activities need to take place? Like, do you have to perform measurement activities with some regular interval? And the same with the communication, right? Do you have to report up to senior management with some regular interval, or is it just kind of whatever makes sense for each individual company?
So within the time frame question, it is up to the organization. So what makes sense? There isn't a standard model for how often the review and measurement activities should be performed, but you need to do it at an interval that makes sense for the organization to take action against, right? If your measures aren't timely, then what's the point in measuring them? So again, I would turn this back to the organization to say, if I'm looking at this measure and I need to take action, what is the time frame in which I need to do that? The other thing to consider is measures that have been done for a while and are ingrained within the organization. This is just something that we're doing. You don't want to set and forget it, but you maybe don't have to look at that as much as you do at measuring an activity that maybe is new, or you're undertaking some sort of improvement. So different timeframes will apply to different measures within your organization.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just kind of like the well-established ones won't require as much attention, right? Because they're already adopted and people already know about them and are using, whatever kind of protocol it is for communication or measurement or whatever. And so it probably doesn't need to be revisited quite as often if it's something that's just well adopted in the organization.
Exactly. And again, I talked about this a little bit before, but your measures will change, right? They'll change over time. They'll change based on, the objectives within your organization. But if you want to tie this back to CMMC, your measurement objectives that, again, you derive your measures from, they really should align with the organization's commitment to increasing cybersecurity, right? And they should align with the CMMC practices. So when an assessor is coming in at level 4, they're really looking at those measures that are measuring the effectiveness of what you've implemented for CMMC. In a later podcast, we're going to talk about how this measurement data can inform you and can help you optimize your practices, right? So that you get into at a level 5 for CMMC, and we'll go into more detail in a later podcast about that. But, reviewing and measuring is kind of the next step and gets you towards, really optimizing your activities.
Okay, great. So I'm sure that the level 5 podcast on optimizing will be really useful to the more mature organizations, right? That need to achieve that level. So This was good. So why don't we close by talking about some of the resources and where they can be accessed. We have already mentioned a few. This podcast will be available on the SEI website, which is SEI CMU EDU podcasts, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. We'll link to kind of the other resources in the script. And then as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Katie Rye on LinkedIn, or don't hesitate to email us at info@sei.cmu.edu. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. This episode is available where you download podcasts, including SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. It is also available on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts and the SEI's YouTube channel. This copyrighted work is made available through the Software Engineering Institute, a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. For more information about the SEI and this work, please visit www.sei.cmu.edu. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at info@sei.cmu.edu. Thank you.